Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Danielle Parker, and I work for the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia. This is our latest webinar. Today is called Historic Resources of McDowell County. It's a virtual tour. I'm joined today by Courtney Zimmerman, and she is an architectural historian and registered professional engineer. She owns her own business, Aurora Research Associates. She has a Master's of Science in Historic Preservation from Columbia University. She's also worked as a structural engineer for the Washington, D.C. office of Robert Silman Associates. And in 2011, she founded her own business. Before that, she also worked for the West Virginia Division of Highways. So Courtney comes to us today with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of Virginia historical resources. So before I hand it over to Courtney, I just wanted to let you all know that we'll be taking questions today. You can submit those through either the chat feature or the questions feature. And then at the end of the webinar, we will answer those questions for you. If you're having any technical difficulties, feel free to reach out through the chat and I'll try to help you deal with that and resolve those issues. But again, thank you for joining us, and I will be turning it over to Courtney. Thanks for joining us today, Courtney.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me. It was unfortunate that we couldn't all meet in person for the conference earlier this month, but this is a great alternative. I am gonna describe to you a big survey that I did for the West Virginia Division of Highways. So we'll talk about the survey itself, and then I'll take you through some of the communities that we saw. We surveyed so many buildings. We saw so many towns. I wish that I could cover them all, but I had to sort of narrow it down to some of the highlights. So let's get started here. Here we go. So the Coal Heritage Survey, there was an original Coal Heritage Survey that was conducted in 1991, and that got federal funding, and it took place in 7 counties, and it was just 3 women who surveyed thousands and thousands of buildings. It really is, their effort was monumental, and after having been there, I had even more appreciation for what they did. So of course, that was 25 years ago. So the West Virginia Division of Highways, which relies on these surveys for Section 106 review, got a highway or a federal transportation enhancement grant to update part of the whole Coal Heritage Survey. So I was the consultant for that. So our scope was 2,000 properties, and we were going to start in McDowell and move on to Raleigh County, but we found 2,000 properties in McDowell to document. So we did our field work over 2 weeks, 1 week in November and 1 week in December in 2016. Our survey team, I had a sub-consultant, EnviroScience, which is a environmental consulting firm. So I trained a few of their biologists in architectural field survey. They loved the change, and they did a great job. And then I had, so from left to right, we had Sarah, Ann, and then myself and Matthew. That was the Aurora Research Associates team. And then Teal, Alex, and Nara also helped out. So in case you don't know, McDowell County is the southernmost county in West Virginia. This is a general overview of the county. The main highway that goes through is Route 52, also known as the Coal Heritage Highway. Welch is the county seat. This is the courthouse in Welch. I guess, yeah, so I can talk more about some history in a minute, but we'll go through the survey. So this is the West Virginia Historic Property Inventory form many of you may be familiar with. The original forms in 1991 look very similar to what we use today. They had, in a lot of cases, pretty basic information, very simple description, not a lot of historical background for each resource. So that's something we wanted to look at a little closer. So we added, you can see the 2 pages on the left we added a little more detail. We used a mobile device, a mobile app, to do our field survey on iPads. So this is the field survey interface. So this allowed us to really collect a lot of information quickly. And the great thing about it is that we could take a picture with the iPad and associate it with the record. So we wouldn't be, so if you've done a survey, you know how frustrating it is when you get back to the office and you don't know which building goes with which form, and it's all a total mess. So this really helped us be organized, which is important with such a big survey and multiple people. There's a field survey interface where you can collect architectural information about the building, and then that automatically populates a historic property inventory form that then you can complete in more detail back in the office. And it's pre-populated with all the West Virginia SHPO terms, and it conforms to their survey manual. So we divided it was a huge database, so we had different sections geographically delineated. So you would just select the database for where you were working that day. And then a lot of time, we were also able to pull in the historic the photos from the old forms, so we could make sure we knew we had the right building when we were trying to find the resources that had been surveyed in 1991, as well as add resources that had never been surveyed. So here's an overview of what we surveyed. We looked at 2007 resources. 965 of those were resurveyed from the 91 survey, and then we created 1,042 new property inventory forms. So this is just, so these were the eligibility recommendations. 7 of them were already listed, and we recommended some individual listings, quite a number of historic districts, some multiple property listings, and then a lot of them were not eligible for various reasons. Some of them we wanted to know more about. And then previously, we found that some previously surveyed resources had been demolished. So that was 327, which is kind of a lot. So, we also use GIS for our mapping and data analysis. So the great thing about using the database and the mobile app is that data analysis makes it really easy. So we could sort by architectural style, we could do charts by property use, and we could even do estimated construction dates to kind of do some quantitative analysis of what we found. So just looking, for example, at estimated construction dates, this just follows what you would expect to see based on the historic context of McDowell County. So in the late 1800s, there wasn't much going on there. It was very remote. They knew there was coal there. And then things sort of picked up, towards the end of the 19th century. And then you just see a huge population explosion. So our dates of construction confirmed, what we would expect to see. And then as you get into the 30s with the Depression and then the decline of the coal industry, we have fewer buildings being constructed. Again, we could also look quantitatively at the materials and the windows. This helps us get an idea of integrity, sort of just able to compare what we found and evaluate integrity on sort of a large scale basis. So these are some of our individually eligible properties. These coaling towers, there were a few of those. They are a disappearing resource, so we recommended those for individual listings. Then company-related and institutional buildings like company offices, railroad-related resources like the tunnel, and then there were some individually eligible residences. We recommended, what is this, 10 or 12 historic districts. Basically, if there was a decent concentration, because so much has been lost in McDowell County and in the southern coal fields, if there was any kind of concentration of buildings and they pretty much had the same form, they demonstrated the repetitive form that you see in coal company houses, we recommended it a historic district. So we were pretty open with what we considered a historic district. We'll look at some more of these in more detail. So here are some photos of some of the places that we recommended as historic districts. Then there were sometimes there were significant structures. They couldn't be in a historic district because the integrity wasn't there, or like with the railroad, it's just too spread out. You're not gonna really call a whole railroad a historic district. So we recommended multiple property listings, and this would be statewide. Our scope didn't include doing a cover document or a context for these, but it would be a statewide context for company housing where good examples could still be listed. And then the Norfolk and Western Railroad, very significant transportation link in southern West Virginia with a lot of contributing elements throughout many counties. Okay, so we are going to start our virtual tour, and we are going to start as if we were coming in from Princeton or Bramwell or, points east, because that's the way you'd normally get to McDowell County. So we are going to sort of just take a drive all along the roads of McDowell County and see what we find. So the first town that you come to when you get to McDowell County, or one of the first, is Maybury. So it's typified by this large Norfolk and Western Railroad bridge. This is not the original trestle that was there. They rerouted the railroad in 1949, I believe. So it had a different look. The whole town had a different kind of landscape, although it did still have a very tall wooden trestle in the area. So this is like Maybury's signature, this big trestle. And so as you're driving down Route 52, this is sort of a typical view that you're going to see, buildings, houses lining the road. Of course, the road was not the main way to get in or around in McDowell County for most of its early history. It was the railroad. So if you were going anywhere in the early days, you took a train. Now, Route 52 generally parallels the Norfolk and Western Main Line, which is, so yeah, that's the kind of main thoroughfare through the county. So you see small houses, you see, bigger houses like this, sort of a mixture. So then near Maybury is Switchback, and there's a Powerhouse Road sort of parallels, it goes off Route 52 and around the hillside and then comes back. And here we have the James Elwood Jones house, which is already individually listed on the National Register. James Elwood Jones was a coal magnate. This is the gatehouse, cute little gatehouse on this property. Now, it has replacement siding, but that could be removable. We hope, maybe somebody want to buy it and, revitalize it, go for it. And then there's also a big power plant here. This was the Pocahontas Consolidated Collieries power plant. So it's a very noticeable building. If you're on Route 52 or if you're on Powerhouse Road, you're going to come to this, and it's sort of like, what is that? So kind of catches your eye. Next, we have Elkhorn. So let me tell you a little bit about Elkhorn. Do I have anything? Oh. Well, I can't find my notes on Elkhorn. So again, this Russian Orthodox church is something when you're driving on Route 52 and you look and you see that, it catches your eye because it has this onion dome, and it's not something that we would expect to see in southern West Virginia. But of course, there was a very significant immigrant population that came to work in the mines, and so they established their own religious institutions, and so this Russian Orthodox Church is one of them. It still exists. The congregation moved to Bluefield, so there's not the active congregation is not in this building anymore, but the building is still there. So Elkhorn is kind of a little hamlet with a variety of houses and this little post office, really good integrity, original wood siding and windows, and then I liked this public service company brick building with the brick lintels. So yeah, Elkhorn has this sense of a little, it's off the main road, so it's a little hamlet. All right, so next we come to, this is more of Elkhorn. So you see, so the way that these towns and communities developed is that smaller, minor working class houses would be concentrated down along the railroad or near the mines. And then as you went up the hillside, the houses would get spaced further apart and they would be bigger. And these were the houses that maybe more supervisory roles employees would live in. So you can see going up this hill, these houses are bigger. This is a very large house. I actually don't know the story on this house on the right, but somebody does because someone made an HPI for it. So you can go look that up and read. You can read about any of these houses on the HPIs that we made. So then you come up and we have a little side road that goes up and hits a few communities up in the northeast corner of McDowell County. So Algoma is one, and Algoma has a company store that you can see here that is still there. Very interesting, more modernistic design. Very striking with the different color brick patterns. Actually, it's like glazed tile and brick string courses. That's something that catches your eye. And then we found these coke ovens that are just in someone's yard. And they use them. They have, their little garden gnomes in them, and they have put the old coke ovens to good use. But it's always exciting for me to see coke ovens. They just hold this fascination because they're like archaeological almost. So we were always looking for those. They're disappearing very quickly as well. Again, another company store is in Ashland. This is the Ashland Company store. It was being used for tourism purposes for a while, so it was restored. I think it's vacant, or it was at the time we were there. But still, a really great example, and look at the contrast between the Algoma store and the Ashland store. They're pretty close together, so it's interesting to be able to see and compare those two. Then going on up the road to Crumpler. Crumpler was a coal company town, and you can see it has this repetitive form of these two-story houses. And so there are different, there are these two-story houses with an L, and then there are some one-story pyramidal roofed houses. So you can see there were sections where all the houses were the same. They did try to use some variety in their house designs. So Keystone. So someone wrote a little tome about Keystone. Not the most flattering account in 1912. Whoops. I don't know. This made me laugh. It was just it's a little book that's all about how horrible Keystone is. I don't know. I mean, it was probably a lot of fun, to be honest. But Keystone is still there. Keystone was not a company town. It was like an independent village. So it looks more like your typical commercial downtown center. And they still have some coal equipment or infrastructure there that you can see, and so you can get more of a sense of what it might have been like during its heyday when you're in downtown Keystone. Here's another view of Keystone. So this is the Keystone Bank, time tried, panic tested. This made me laugh because they had a huge scandal in the 80s with embezzlement or something. So I don't know, their sign doesn't really apply anymore. I mean, the bank is closed. So yeah. So yeah, Keystone, very typical brick commercial buildings from the early 20th century, and then surrounded by more of a variety of residential because it was not a company town per se. Here's another coal company store, the Coppers store, in really good condition. I think it was also used for tourism or restoration. It was restored for some purpose fairly recently. So then we get to Welch, which is the county seat, of course. And Welch was, so the really unique, or I guess typical thing about Welch is that it's built in a terraced fashion. So it's just very steep mountains all around. The Tug Fork River goes right through there as well. And it's just very striking to see these houses and buildings. They're towering on top of each other as they go up the hillside. And here you can see this street. I mean, it is a street. It's super steep. That's how things are. I was driving my car trying to do the survey, and I was driving up and up, and I ended up in someone's driveway, like yard, basically. So I had to back out. So that's the way things are when you do surveys in the mountains. You never know where you might end up, and then you have to back your way out because there's no other way to get anywhere. Just adds to the fun. So, and then the other challenge is that the sunlight, it's dark. So the sun is shining behind a mountain, and so it's very hard to get. It's like you're never at the right angle for good photos. The sun is in your face, or the sun is blocked, or it's dark at 5 p.m. I mean, it's got its own set of challenges for architectural survey. Anyway, so the downtown business district. I mean, Welch was like a metropolis within the southern coal fields. Here's a picture of McDowell Street, which is the main street in the early 20th century, and it was just where everyone went for the movies, for entertainment, just wall-to-wall people. They had I think it was the 4th of July parade was their one of their traditional favorite celebrations. So this shows today, this is a Google Street View of this, right, you can see here's the Oddfellows here and here. So it was sort of fell victim to some urban renewal. There were some fires here. They built this big parking garage. So it is a historic district though. Since it was already a listed historic district, our survey did not include the commercial center of Welch, but we did residential the residential areas around the commercial center. This is a building that we liked a lot. It is one room wide. It's built along the river or the creek, and it's literally like the narrowest, longest building. I'm not sure how it stands up, but the whole survey team liked that one. So this is sort of would be like a middle to upper class, historically residential part of Welch, and you can kind of see the terracing here in these photos, how it just goes up the hill. This is across the creek from the downtown historic district. And then again, just very steep grades. So these houses are towering above the street level here. This on the upper right hand is down along the Tug Fork River south of the main business district of Welch. So these are also, this is not a company town. These are private homes. So these are a little more middle class, I would say, but you have American Foursquare, bungalow, Cape Cod, real mix of different styles here from the probably 1910s up through 1930 in this particular neighborhood. And then you also had, this is a house that we recommended for individual listing. That was pretty unique. It had a swimming pool. This is it's Riverside Drive, but it's the main road coming south out of Welch, Route 103. So heading west, continuing, we're going to jump over here to Yeager, which was also a sizable town in the county, and in the western area. This was where people would go for shopping and entertainment. This is a coal company store or coal company offices located kind of out of town, a little off the beaten path that we found. It had been previously documented. We went and found it and updated it. I noticed this international style house. It's been altered quite a bit, but I just thought it was really interesting to find something of this style all the way out in western McDowell County. And so we documented that. Has this characteristic metal industrial type window that turns the corner. You see that a lot in streamline architecture of the 30s, as well as these curves. And then also, this is where one of the coaling towers is. There's a huge railroad yard called Oval Yards outside of Yeager. So there's a coaling tower there that we recommended eligible. So we have, again, some typical, these are variations on a theme for houses. This is a shot of downtown Yeager, and you can see it's, again, pretty dense for West Virginia. Commercial buildings, brick, and you see, intact storefronts in some of these. And then over here this was a interesting sort of craftsman / colonial revival house that was across, it was a one-off, unique, near the railroad. So you can speculate that it was a boarding house or a house of someone who worked for the railroad. We can't confirm that, but it is always interesting to try to speculate, what this house is doing here and who lived in it and why they built it. And then here's another shot of Yeager. So, you can see at one time there was a lot going on in Yeager, lots of buildings. Montgomery Ward catalog store was here. And then moving south along Route 80, we come to Bradshaw. So Bradshaw is again, not a coal company town, but was an independent city or town. This is the grade school, probably the most noticeable building in Bradshaw right today, and it is serving as the town hall. Then we get down to War. So, you know, one of the best things about Southern West Virginia are the names of the towns. So War is one of the larger towns in getting towards southern McDowell County. And again, you see brick commercial buildings. The railroad station is still there. That is the War Town Hall now, is the railroad station. There are not that many railroad stations left in McDowell County, so this is notable because one of the few places you can see one. And then one of the most famous towns in McDowell County, of course, is Coalwood. So Coalwood and its sister town, Coretta, were company towns for, let me look this up, the Carter Coal Company. So it was established around 1901 and 1902 by George L. Carter. He came and started mining coal, and then how coal company towns were developed was because when they started mining coal in McDowell County, there was no infrastructure, and it grew so quickly that there was nowhere for miners were flooding in. They needed people to get the coal out of the ground, but there were no stores, there were no towns, there were no houses, there was nothing there. So the coal companies would take it upon themselves to provide this and to start establishing towns where people, so they could house their workers. So that's this is Coretta. Coretta is on Route 16. This is again, typical one-story. Here we have some two-story houses that would have been coal company houses, the church. I mean, the coal company built everything, the churches, the recreation centers, I mean, everything. This is the Coretta Company store. We have a huge variety of company store types. If you think about Ashland and Algoma, and then you look at Coretta, they're all very different in their design. So this is there are really only a handful of company stores still standing in McDowell County and throughout southern West Virginia. Coretta is one of them. And then going more into Coalwood, up Route 16 in McDowell County. This is the heart of Coalwood. Now, this building was the clubhouse, and it was standing when we were there, and it's now been demolished. So we were fortunate that we got to see it in person. It's, of course, tragic that it's gone. This is the superintendent's house in the background here. And this is sort of the just center of Coalwood. These are the mine offices. The company store stood next to, the Coalwood Company store stood next to these mine offices. I think on, I don't know which side, one of these sides. This is the town pool, there's the machine shop. So there are a handful of, I mean, relatively speaking, Coalwood, even with the loss of the clubhouse, still has a fair number of company-related structures. This is apartments, these Tudor-style apartments. There are two of these. These were slated for demolition. They may be demolished now. So these are very unique. These are sort of boarding houses, or would have been for single people or smaller families. Here's a closer view of the superintendent's house. And then Coalwood has some really unique building types, especially these I call them reverse salt boxes, these very steep roofs, and they have these diamond shingles, which are um, subtle, but it makes them all different, makes them noticeable as well. So you'll see duplexes with this kind of roof, single family homes with that kind of roof, and then the other main house type in Colwood is this hipped roof, sort of long two-story house. This is Homer Hickham's house. So Homer Hickam is famous because of his book that he wrote called The Rocket Boys, which was made into a film, October Sky, where the boys at Big Creek High School got an interest in rocketry. And then, of course, Homer Hickam went on to work for NASA. So this is his boyhood home. We recommended that individually eligible for criterion B. So then moving on to Berwind. So Berwind is on past war. And this, again, we recommended as a historic district. Berwind was established in 1905. And the Berwind family was from Pennsylvania. And they were investors and coal company operators, owners, who operated in many different areas. So if there was coal in Pennsylvania, they would expand into West Virginia as well. It was a pretty convoluted system to try to understand the relationships between the railroads and the land companies and the coal operators. I won't get into that now. There are lots of good books you can read about it, and we do go over it in summary in the survey report. So anyway, back to Berwind. Berwind was sort of, again, a company town. It provided everything that the people needed. There was a company store that's now demolished. I had to do a double take when I saw a picture of the company store. It looks exactly like the Whipple company store in Fayette County. So obviously, there were standard plans for company stores. Of course, I mean, there were standard plans for houses and buildings within a company, but apparently they shared or were inspired by each other. I guess that's no big surprise, but so yeah, if you have seen the Whipple company store, it's sort of a big wooden two-story octagonal shaped thing, very distinctive. So that's what it looked like at Berwind. So let's see, this is the there was is this the bank? There was a bank and like the Masonic Lodge. I think this is the Masonic Lodge. Again, this, don't see a lot of this cut stone construction in McDowell County still standing. This is, and the bank or the other building, it looks just like this. They're twins. So this is a view of Berwind. This is the superintendent's house in the center. And this was a company doctor's home that's still there, one of the largest homes. There's a large variety of house types. So here you have, this is a unique house type to Southern West Virginia. It may be in other states as well, but this basically an I house with two one-story shed roof wings. You see this over and over in McDowell County and elsewhere as a standard company house type. So we have that in Berwind. So Berwind was organized around pedestrian walkways. So the houses would face each other along a pedestrian walkway, and then there were alleys behind, and the houses each had a wash house. So the miners would come home, they would wash up and take their coal dust clothes off in the wash house, so it would be kept completely separate from the house itself. People that grew up in Berwind are very, fondly reminiscent of of growing up there. The design of it so that it was very pedestrian oriented, and the houses were facing each other, and it really fostered a sense of community. So that's a unique aspect of Berwind. You can still see, where those pedestrian walkways were, and some of the wash houses are still there. These are here for comparison on the lower right hand. This is Joseph Berwin's mansion in New York City, and this is Joseph Berwin's mansion in Providence, Rhode Island. So, I mean, Berwind was a nice place to live, but look at the wealth that Joseph Berwind made off of these people who were living in Berwind. I just think the contrast is, very interesting, and people made a lot of money off of these miners' hard efforts. And people that you talk to will usually, they're pretty fond of talking about the old days. It was good. Everybody had a job. So, people don't really complain about it when we were out in the field. They weren't like, oh, we were exploited by these coal companies or Joseph Berwind. But there is a contrast. Joseph Berwind lived in this mansion, and somebody lived in this small little hall and parlor. All right, so moving on down south to Bishop. Bishop is really mostly in Virginia, but it had really good integrity. It had a lot of houses still standing, and what we learned was that the African American part of Bishop was in West Virginia. So the part that we surveyed would have been the segregated section of Bishop, the company town of Bishop. So there were two very distinct house types in Bishop, and they alternated just like clockwork. You'd have a 4-square duplex, and then you'd have a gable front with eave returns. So they were. This was a later. Bishop was built in like 1930. So and it was considered a model company town. So they really were taking efforts to make it a nice place to live for the residents. Okay, so then we're going to circle back up around towards Gary. On the way to Gary, so Gary was the company town for the United States Coal and Coke Company, which was owned by U.S. Steel. So the U.S. Coal and Coke Company provided all the coal to make steel in Pittsburgh and throughout what we call the Rust Belt now. So this was just a massive operation. Gary was huge, and it had a lot of little satellite towns, and they were named after the mines. So there was a Venus mine, Venus number 1, Thorpe number 1, Thorpe number 2, on and on. And so the town would be called Thorpe or Venus. Elbert, Filbert, all of this was part of the larger Gary area. So here's Thorpe. This is the school. Thorpe School. It's, obviously in very bad condition. Here's, I think this was it's the post office, and it was a company building of some sort here on the lower right. It has good integrity. Again, Thorpe has a mix. Here's some larger buildings right around the road that again would have been occupied by higher level employees within the company. We also found some coke ovens in Thorpe that we document. Well, they were previously documented, and we managed to find them. I mean, these are half collapsed, so these would have been full beehive domed brick structures. Most of them that you see now are collapsed. Going towards along the main road to the town of Gary, you come through a cemetery, Venus Cemetery. It surrounds the road on both sides, and I loved this place. This was so fascinating to me. You could walk through and see clearly that people were from all over the world. This gravestone is in a foreign language, and there are many more like that. I almost got mauled by a wild dog in the cemetery, but that's beside the point. Anyway, if you go, take pepper spray for wild dogs and take a walk around, because it's really a beautiful place, and you get a sense of the people that lived here and mined the coal and made McDowell County. I mean, it was one of the largest coal producing areas in the whole nation in the early 20th century because of these people. So Venus is a satellite town of Gary, and again, here you can see these distinctive two-story houses with the one-story shed roof. Again, you just see that over and over. And you know, this is also, it was really hard to capture in photographs how these rows of houses just go right up the mountainside, very steeply, and they almost look like they're built on top of each other. Another satellite town of Gary is Wilco. So this is the Wilco School, which is, again, I mean, we've seen some neoclassical schools, and this is sort of more of a Art Deco style. So kind of a different style of school to happen upon. Here's a historic photo of Gary in 1904, just when it was getting started. It began in 1902, so this would have been a couple years after it got started. And then so today in Gary, you have a lot of these very long, narrow houses of different maybe you have some that are this twin peak type thing, and then others with a hip roof. So those are the two main types of these long, narrow houses you see, but they line the streets, and it's very narrow. So it really has its own sense of place because the streets are so narrow, and you have these long, narrow houses sort of closing, densely packed on each other in parts of Gary. And then this is a little bit outside of town. There's a row of these houses. Again, they called it Wall Street because of the wall, and so these had a little more space. You know, would have been occupied by single families or higher level employees. This is the fire. This was the fire department. This stone building on the upper left corner. Oh, this happened when we were surveying in Gary. We documented this building and walked down this road, and when we came back, it was on fire. We went back and reported it to the town hall, and they didn't suspect us. I mean, we didn't do it, but they just let us be on our way. So that was, kind of bizarre. Yep, again, this is no longer there, obviously, but this was a whole row of buildings, very long and narrow, multifamily homes, duplexes, on another street outside of the main town of Gary. Elbert and Filbert, again, going south out of Gary, are two little satellite towns, more coke ovens. And then again, the further you get back into the hollow, the closer and tighter and narrower it gets, and the closer these houses get together and kind of close in on the road, which is very atmospheric. So Pageton is a pretty large area. It had several different sections. We recommended it as a historic district. This is a road, and again, you can see this very grand house at the end of this lane. I don't think I have a closer picture of it. Was probably the supervisor, the superintendent's home, and then the management would live in these houses along, large houses along this road. The company store is at the end of this road, sort of over here. Right here's this was the company store. So that was sort of the center. And then you have one section of Pageton. Well, this is the school. I believe it's also been demolished. This is it's basically a neoclassical, but it has this Art Deco entrance. So we liked the entrance portal a lot on the Pageton School. So you have some sections of town which are just long rows of houses exactly like this. And then you have another section sort of down the road a little bit that has these two-story homes with the gable peaks. So this, Pageton was built in different sections, and, certain levels of employees would live in various sections. It had a good integrity. I mean, you could, as far as integrity goes for these, a lot of things have been changed, windows, siding, but as for a historic district, if the repetitive form is there and it's clearly a company town with, a standard house design, if you got that sense when you were there, then we considered it to have good integrity. Also, based on what we knew of the towns, how big they had been, we could sort of somewhat judge on how much had been demolished. Anawalt is a little town sort of towards the east here, heading back east. This was the National Bank of Anawalt, someone's house now, but you can tell it's special because it's got coins and it's brick and it's, kind of a stately building. And then Jenkins Jones, I think Jenkins Jones is one of my favorites. Jenkins Jones, it did not qualify as a historic district because it has been mostly demolished. And it's really hard. I mean, people told us this, and you can see pictures of it, of all these towns, like all the hollers, the valleys, the hillsides, the roads, there were just company houses everywhere. And you can't tell, I mean, you can barely tell now. It's been demolished. 70% of Jenkins Jones has been demolished, but it's really hard to comprehend just how many people lived there and how many houses there were. This is the Methodist Church in Jenkins Jones. I believe it's individually listed already. This railroad trestle, we recommend, I think, railroad related resource. And so here, this is just a typical row of homes in Jenkins Jones. This was a little shared coal delivery structure where you can see one up here. These houses would share one. And then another unique thing in Jenkins Jones were these concrete block houses. A few of there was a certain subset of houses built of this concrete block, which we did not see anywhere else. So that was unique. And then Jenkins Jones company store and company headquarters are still there. They're previously listed. They are in very dire condition. This is a very remote place. So that to its detriment, it's not going to, people don't even know these are here, except for the vandals, apparently. So, it's a hard sell for preservation when it's so remote sometimes, unfortunately. Here's the other, these two buildings face each other across the road. So that's sort of, those are some highlights of McDowell County. The draft survey materials are on the Aurora Research Associates website. You can follow this link, or you can go to the website and you will be able to find the historic property. Well, you'll find the draft historic survey. There is a Google Earth mapping file that you can use to identify surveyed resources wherever you're interested, and then you can look up the HPIs. They're on Google Drive. They're available to the public. So these are in draft form, but they are available for you to use. And then the West Virginia Division of Highways will also be posting posting them on their website as well. So that basically, we're at the end of our time almost, but we want to do some questions. So I will turn it back over to Danielle.
Thank you, Courtney. That was excellent, really informative, and I enjoyed having the photos and where it was going. So we have one question so far, a couple people saying that they enjoyed the presentation. The very first question was from the beginning of your presentation when you said that you used the app to do the survey. What app did you use, and is it free?
The app, well, the software is called FileMaker. It is a database software. There's a free version of it called FileMaker Go. But in order to, I used FileMaker to customize the app and survey myself. So I used FileMaker to develop this app in-house. So you can use FileMaker Go. It has limited functionality. You would have to pay for the full version of the software in order to customize it for a survey.
Okay, the next question is, based on your survey, what do you think the potential is for a cohesive heritage trail or distinct heritage tourism opportunities?
Well, I think one thing that we talked about in the survey report is the ATV tourism industry is growing in McDowell County and in southern West Virginia. So I think that there's an opportunity there, definitely, to because people are able to get back, and in fact they're there to go into these remote places. So that's the whole point. People enjoy that. So I definitely think that cultural resources could and should be integrated into ATV tourism, definitely. It is there are a lot of challenges in McDowell County, and as everyone knows, I'm sure I don't have to to tell you that, but so it can be a hard sell, you know, when people aren't employed and they don't even have a grocery store in the county. You know, historic preservation is not high on their list, but it could be, it could and should be part of an integrated into, you know, larger plan for this area of what we're going to do to help people that live here, and to recognize it as more of, it's more than just a place where there are impoverished people. I mean, there's a lot to love and appreciate about McDowell County. So I don't have all the answers to that. It's a very complex problem, but this, I hope, you know, it's out there, and I hope that it's useful to people in some way.
The next question is, did you encounter any special issues with documenting current property ownership in McDowell County? And have you found any special sources, tools for identifying current property ownership?
No, we did not identify current property owners for this survey. My colleague Sarah Ellswick, who assisted on this, she has a, I don't know if it she has a resource for tax records. I would have to get back with you. If you can email me If anybody out there has any questions that I can't answer here, please email me directly, and I can explore that further for you. But I know that land ownership I'm glad you brought that up. That's a huge challenge because a lot of this land is owned by coal company or land companies still that were established in the early 20 or late 19th century. So and then sometimes the land was transferred to individual owners from the company. I mean, I can see how that is a huge, well, that, and I know from talking to people that's been a huge obstacle for preservation because you can't even figure out who owns it, or they won't let go of it.
The next question is, at the time of survey, did the West Virginia Department of Highways have any plans to develop further tourism opportunities, or was that contingent on the results of the survey?
So the DOH, they do have like the King Coal Highway. There are a couple large road projects in southern West Virginia that are sort of, you know, how road projects go. It takes a very long time to get everything in place. So this was not directly connected to one of those, but they have a lot of projects in southern West Virginia, and the original Coal Heritage Survey was so out of date that it was not that useful to them. So this, you know, they got the grant from the USDOT to update that survey. It's not directly connected to any particular project. But if and when there are projects in McDowell County, this will be, you know, useful to them as they do their Section 106 process.
So Sarah is on here. You had mentioned her, and she says that she used the West Virginia Property Viewer to find the names of property owners.
Okay, so yeah, I knew that she had a website that she used. So let me I can post that link on my website as well. I'll get that from Sarah, and we can share that when I'll update the website link that you see.
Okay, and then one other question is, as you surveyed, did you find that local people were curious about your work and interested in results that might come out of it?
They were, you know, they were so kind, and the reaction that we got, well, I always lead with, I'm an architectural historian, and I wear like a bright yellow vest because I don't want anyone to think I'm sketchy. So they usually think that you're, you know, from the highway or from some utility department, or, you know, they just assume it's, you know, you're doing something boring. But when we told them we were doing a historic preservation survey, they were surprised. And I actually found it kind of sad because they were like, well, why would you want to do that here? A lot of times, and they would say, oh, it used to be so much better, and so I, you know, we really tried to be positive about what we were seeing, and you know, when they understood what we were doing, and then they would open up about what the town was like, or you know, give us information about growing up there or buildings or whatnot. So I really, and then I was, you know, we would tell them that this would be available to them. So I want to, it's been a very long process getting the products put together, but if anybody there has any ideas for, you know, if there are libraries we should send this to, or, you know, the McDowell County Historical Society or any other groups like that, we'd be more than happy to share these results with them.
Another question is, while not in McDowell County, you mentioned the dwindling numbers of company stores statewide. Have you heard about any groups trying to find rehabilitation, restoration funding for the Itman Company store and office in Wyoming County?
I am familiar with that property. I don't know. I have to say I'm not familiar with any efforts, but I mean maybe Danielle might have more of an idea um, on that one.
You know, it's been some time since I've heard of anyone wanting to do anything with that building. I know that there's some interest, but I think it was for sale a couple years ago, but I can't say for sure what's been going on there. So any other questions coming in from our audience? Those all were really great ones. Thank you. Just give it another minute here.
Well, yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's a little weird to feel like I'm just kind of talking to myself in my office, but it was,
Well,
I'm glad we got to do it.
and thank you, Courtney, and thank you all for joining us. And for anyone who wants to follow up on this, watch it again, or share it, it will be available on our YouTube channel and on the Preservation Alliance website by the end of the day. So feel free to check back for that. And I hope that again for future ones. Hope you all stay safe and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.